KLM Croydon, 1936. December 9th, 1936. Croydon Airport, London. Thick fog smothers the runway, reducing visibility to just 55 yards. A KLM Douglas DC-2, registration PHAKL, prepares for takeoff, carrying 17 people bound for Amsterdam. Among them, Arvid Lindman, a former Swedish Prime Minister, Magnus Vigelius, a Finnish athlete, and Juan de la Cierva, the Spanish inventor of the autogiro. This was a routine flight until it wasn't. The aircraft follows a white guideline painted on the runway, standard procedure for low visibility conditions. But just 200 yards into its takeoff run, it veers left. Something's wrong. Instead of climbing west, the plane heads south, straight toward rising terrain. Seconds later, it clips a chimney in Purley, then slams into a vacant house. The explosion is instantaneous. Flames engulf the wreckage, reducing the aircraft and 2 homes to rubble. Only 2 people survive, the radio operator and a flight attendant. This was the deadliest crash in British history at the time, killing 15 people. Investigators scoured the site but couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. Some blamed the fog, others suspected a navigational error or mechanical failure. But the official inquiry, it ended without a verdict, an open case forever unanswered. What makes this disaster even more chilling is that it wasn't the first. 2 years earlier, an Air France plane crashed after taking off along the same white line in similar foggy conditions. The lesson? Visibility and guidance systems needed serious upgrades, but in 1936, the technology simply wasn't there. The Croydon crash highlights the challenges of aviation's early days, when even the most experienced pilots were at the mercy of the elements, and when a single wrong turn could mean the difference between life and death. KLM Douglas C47, 1946. On a cold November in 1946, a KLM Douglas C47 Skytrain was making its final approach to Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport. It was supposed to be a routine flight from London, but the thick fog and bad weather turned it into a nightmare. The first attempt to land failed. The second aborted again. By the third approach, the crew was desperate to put the plane down, but something went terribly wrong. The captain realized they weren't aligned with the runway and made a sharp left turn. Too sharp. The aircraft slammed into the ground, bursting into flames. There were 26 people on board, 21 passengers and 5 crew members. No one survived. Among the victims was renowned Dutch novelist Herman de Man, a tragic loss to the literary world. Investigators determined that the crash was caused by an incorrect approach configuration, worsened by poor visibility. In simple terms, the pilots were fighting the weather and their own miscalculations, and it ended in disaster. This was the deadliest aviation accident in the Netherlands at the time, and in a cruel twist, just 8 days earlier, another KLM DC-3 flying the same route in the opposite direction crashed on approach to London's Croydon Airport due to bad weather. That time, everyone survived, but not this one. The crash of PHTBW was a grim reminder of the dangers of early commercial aviation. Today, we have advanced navigation systems and weather monitoring, but back then, pilots had to rely on what they could see. And on that fateful morning, they saw nothing but a wall of fog. KLM Constellation, 1948. On October 20th, 1948, a KLM Lockheed Constellation named Nijmegen crashed near Prestwick Airport in Scotland, killing all 40 people on board. The aircraft, piloted by aviation legend Koen Dirk Parmentier, was en route from Amsterdam to New York with a scheduled stop at Prestwick. But what should have been a routine layover turned into a devastating tragedy, one that could have been avoided. The problem started before the plane even took off. The crew relied on outdated and inaccurate charts that failed to mark key obstacles like towering power lines and high ground near the airport. Add to that an unreliable weather forecast, and the stage was set for disaster. The forecast given to the crew suggested minimal cloud cover at Prestwick, but by the time Nijmegen approached the airfield, the weather had deteriorated into dense fog and drizzle. As the plane neared its approach, Parmentier attempted to land, but was unsure if the strong crosswinds would allow for a safe touchdown. He decided to change course and attempt a landing on an alternate runway, one that KLM guidelines strictly forbade in low visibility. Unbeknownst to the crew, the cloud cover had dropped significantly, creating near-zero visibility conditions. They thought they were above open space, but in reality they were flying directly toward high-voltage power lines. At just 450 feet, the aircraft struck the power cables, igniting a fire. The crew attempted a desperate maneuver to reach the runway, but within seconds, the plane slammed into the hillside, killing everyone aboard. Rescue efforts were delayed due to confusion over jurisdiction, and the last 6 survivors succumbed to their injuries within 24 hours. An inquiry found multiple failures, incorrect maps, poor communication, and a tragic reliance on outdated information. In the end, this disaster was not just a case of bad luck. It was a deadly mix of human error and systemic failures. KLM Flight 592, 1952. March 22, 1952. A routine flight from Rome to Frankfurt ended in disaster when KLM Flight 592, a Douglas DC-6, crashed into a forest just minutes before landing. Of the 47 people on board, only 2 survived. At 10:38 a.m., the crew contacted Frankfurt Air Traffic Control, reporting their position at 4,000 feet. 7 minutes later, they were descending to 2,460 feet over the Offenbach beacon. That was the last transmission. 5 minutes later, the plane was gone, silent, lost. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. The wreckage was beyond recognition, and the exact cause remained undetermined. The most plausible theory? The crew might have flown too low, desperately trying to maintain visual contact with the ground. But why? Instrument failure? Miscalculation? We may never know. This wasn't just another crash. At the time, it was the 4th deadliest accident involving a DC-6, a plane once considered the pinnacle of safe, luxurious air travel. But after this tragedy, confidence wavered. And then there's the eerie fact. This particular aircraft, named Koning and Juliana, had been flying since 1948. 4 years of flawless operation until that fateful descent. 2 people survived, 1 crew member, 1 passenger. 45 others weren't as lucky. A routine descent, a final radio call, then silence. What really happened to KLM Flight 592? A tragic accident, or something more? The aftermath was devastating. Families were left in anguish, searching for closure that never came. With no definitive cause, speculation grew. Some blamed pilot error, others suspected mechanical failure. But in the end, the answers perished with the wreckage, buried beneath the trees of a silent forest. KLM Flight 633, 1954. KLM Flight 633. What should have been a routine journey from Amsterdam to New York turned into a catastrophic disaster over the River Shannon. The aircraft? A Lockheed Super Constellation, one of the most advanced passenger planes of its time. The problem? A mechanical failure no one saw coming. It was 2:40 a.m. on September 5th, 1954. The plane had just refueled at Shannon Airport and was back in the air when something went terribly wrong. The landing gear, which had been retracted, unexpectedly extended mid-flight. The crew, led by veteran pilot Adrian Virley, didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. With the landing gear dragging the plane down, Flight 633 lost altitude fast. Within seconds, the massive aircraft slammed into the shallow waters of the River Shannon. It broke apart on impact, sending fuel fumes into the air. Many passengers were knocked unconscious. Some drowned before rescue teams even knew the crash had happened. The real horror. It took 2.5 hours before anyone at the airport even realized the plane was missing. Survivors clung to the wreckage in the freezing mud, waiting for help. By the time rescuers arrived, 4.5 hours later, 28 people were dead. KLM blamed pilot error, but Virley disagreed. He was forced into early retirement, bitter and humiliated. A routine takeoff, a single mechanical failure, and a disaster that never should have happened. KLM Flight 608, 1954. KLM Flight 608 was a routine passenger flight from New York to Amsterdam that ended in disaster on August 23, 1954. A Douglas DC-6B, christened Willem Bontekoe, took off from Shannon Airport in Ireland for its final leg to Amsterdam. The weather was bad, thick clouds and heavy rain, but the experienced crew pressed on. Everything seemed normal until 11:35 a.m. Air traffic control cleared Flight 608 to descend to 2,500 feet, but there was no response. Minutes later, the plane vanished. Witnesses near the Dutch coast reported seeing it behaving erratically. Some said it flew low over the land before heading back toward the sea. Others claimed to hear a loud explosion. Whatever happened, Flight 608 was gone. Hours later, debris was spotted floating in the North Sea near Bergen. All 21 passengers and crew were lost. Salvage operations using experimental sonar recovered about 50% of the wreckage, but there was no clear answer to what caused the crash. Theories range from electrical failures to cockpit window malfunctions. One investigator believed a faulty cabin heater filled the cockpit with fumes, forcing the pilots to open a window. If that happened, they might have shut down the electrical system to prevent a fire, explaining the radio silence. Others suspected an explosion, possibly from a pressure bottle or an overheating electrical system. No definitive cause was ever found, and Flight 608 remains one of aviation's enduring mysteries. A fully functional aircraft, a routine descent, and then nothing. A sudden disappearance over the sea with no distress call. More than 6 decades later, the unanswered questions still linger. What really happened in those final moments? And could this tragedy have been prevented? KLM Flight 844, 1957. In the early hours of July 16, 1957, KLM Flight 844, a Lockheed 1049E Super Constellation named Neutron, lifted off from Biak Mokmer Airport in Dutch New Guinea. The destination? Manila. But just 4 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft was gone, swallowed by the dark waters of Cenderawasih Bay. The captain made an unusual request. Keep the runway lights on and allow a low pass over the airport. Permission was granted. What should have been a routine maneuver turned into one of the most baffling air disasters of the 1950s. As the aircraft banked into a 180-degree turn, it lost altitude, crashing into the sea just 0.75 miles from the runway. Of the 68 people on board, 58 perished, including all 9 crew members. Miraculously, 10 survived, though their escape from the wreckage was nothing short of a nightmare. Investigators were left with more questions than answers. Was it pilot error? A mechanical failure? Officially, the cause remained undetermined. Some believed the pilot misjudged his altitude, a fatal mistake in the blackness of night. Others speculated a technical malfunction. But one thing was certain, this tragedy could have been avoided. The final report issued a warning. Unnecessary risks, like low passes on commercial flights, should never happen with passengers on board. The wreckage of Neutron sank into waters over 820 feet deep, never recovered, its secrets lost to time. The legacy of Flight 844 serves as a haunting reminder. In aviation, even the smallest miscalculation can lead to disaster. What compelled the captain to make that final pass? We may never know, but for those on board that night, the decision sealed their fate. KLM Flight 607E, 1958. KLM Flight 607E was supposed to be just another transatlantic journey, a packed flight carrying 91 passengers and 8 crew members from Amsterdam to New York, with stopovers in Shannon and Gander. But in the early hours of August 14, 1958, something went terribly wrong. The aircraft, a Lockheed Super Constellation named Hugo de Groot, had been in the air for just 35 minutes after leaving Shannon when radio contact was lost. Hours later, wreckage was found floating in the Atlantic, 110 miles west of Ireland. There were no survivors. Authorities launched an investigation, but they didn't have much to go on. No black boxes, no distress calls, no eyewitnesses. They ruled out a bomb, but couldn't dismiss a catastrophic mechanical failure. The most plausible theory? A malfunctioning propeller due to metal particles clogging the oil regulator. If that happened mid-flight, it could have caused uncontrollable vibrations, throwing the plane into chaos. The pilots had seconds, maybe less, to react. Adding to the tragedy, among the victims were 6 members of the Egyptian fencing team. Their names are forever etched in history, not for their sport, but for the flight that never reached its destination. To this day, Flight 607E remains a chilling mystery, an eerie reminder of how fragile life and aviation can be. A memorial stands in Galway, Ireland, honoring the 99 lives lost. But the real question still lingers: could this disaster have been prevented? Tenerife Airport Disaster, 1977. So let's talk about a day that turned aviation history on its head, March 27, 1977. Picture this: the sunny Canary Islands, but thick fog hangs over Los Rodeos Airport in Tenerife. 2 massive Boeing 747s, a KLM and a Pan Am, are stuck there, diverted from their original destination due to a bomb scare. Now, Los Rodeos wasn't built for this kind of traffic. It's a small airport with 1 runway and 1 taxiway. Imagine trying to parallel park 2 semi-trucks on a narrow street. Chaos ensues. The KLM flight, Rhine, decides to refuel, blocking the Pan Am Clipper Victor from getting to the runway. This delay, a mere 35 minutes, sets the stage for disaster. Here's where it gets truly wild. The KLM 747, with its captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten, a seasoned pilot and flight instructor, starts its takeoff run. In thick fog, with radio communications garbled, he mistakenly believes he has takeoff clearance. The control tower, without ground radar, can't see a thing. Meanwhile, the Pan Am is taxiing down the same runway, trying to find their exit. Confusion reigns. The Pan Am crew is unsure which exit to take, and the fog is so dense they can't see past their nose. Then, at 5:06 p.m., it happens. The KLM 747, roaring down the runway, slams into the Pan Am. The impact is catastrophic. Fuel ignites, turning the scene into an inferno. 583 lives are lost, making it the deadliest accident in aviation history. The aftermath? A mess of blame and finger-pointing. The Spanish investigation points to the KLM captain's error. The Dutch, initially reluctant, eventually concede. KLM ends up paying out millions in compensation, averaging close to $1 million per victim today, adjusted for inflation.